Hey everybody, welcome to Aniki, the podcast about anime with two brothers. I'm Ben.
I am the meaningless void of space.
Really? I guess you are floating out in the empty nether.
In the ether. Yeah, I'm in a giant empty room. Well, it's not completely empty. There are boxes to the right of me, and I'm sitting at a table. And I am using the real microphone. At least I'm not just wearing my headset.
Well, that's
good. What I thought might have had to happen, but it didn't.
So
nobody would be happy with that. Yeah.
You've moved.
I have. I'm in a house. There's an Alabama Crimson Tide light switch over there, and this room is kind of a mist gray.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. That's half the reason we bought this house, because they were from Alabama and had a little Roll Tide thing in their yard.
Oh, you didn't add that yourself?
No, we didn't.
Oh.
They had one.
Well, good for them.
And this light switch cover came with the house. Hot diggity.
So really, you paid for the light switch cover and got a house.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
A very expensive light switch cover. It's kind of like my $10,000 socks that I got. That's from when my appendix popped.
Yes. So, aside from moving, have you done anything geek-like in the last however many weeks it's been since we recorded?
Played a bunch of Destiny 2.
Oh yeah? How's that working out for you?
It's good. It's a fun game. It's got really good gunplay. For some reason, Bungie thought it was a clever idea to put in jumping puzzles into their first-person shooter, which is just frustrating and obnoxious and doesn't test any skill that the rest of the game tests. So I don't know quite why they are there, but there they are. And the original class I picked was the worst at jumping. So I got frustrated a couple times, not gonna lie. Then I found out my friends at church that play were the other two classes. I needed to change class, so I am now replaying the game as a different class.
What class were you before?
I was a warlock, but it turned out my friends at church were a Vanguard main, Warlock secondary, and the other person was a Warlock main, Vanguard secondary. So they didn't have a hunter, so I made a hunter, which actually turns out to be pretty okay because they are good at pistols, which I am good at, and close range combat and whatnot, which I like to do. So it has worked out fairly well.
Well, good.
Because the hunter is a better class for me anyway, turns out. And playing the game a second time, I've gotten used to the gunplay of the game and am destroying all these missions.
Well, good. Glad you're liking it.
But no, it's fun. Yeah, it's kind of like Diablo and Halo mixed together.
I've only played one of those. Diablo.
Yep.
Not
Halo.
Halo.
I kind of figured. Halo was good for the first half, and then the floods show up, and
then everything's terrible.
Bad. Yeah, it's like Bungie does like really smart things, and then they do something dumb. Because it's like Destiny, really good gunplay, everything's awesome. Hey, jump puzzles.
Everybody loves jump puzzles.
It's like, why are these here? This is a first-person shooter. To what end?
Jumping, obviously.
I mean, I guess. I don't know. But now my character has a triple jump, so turns out that's pretty good. I haven't had time to do much else.
So, for me, we just finished, like, literally a couple hours ago, Made in Abyss.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Now, you're again, for the listeners, let's be very specific.
Yes.
You're not saying Maiden Abyss, nor is it made as in a French. Yes.
Although everyone ought to have one. But
I mean, that's true. Everyone ought to have a maid.
In this case, no.
Everybody ought to have a working girl.
To be created in Abyss. And I have to say that without qualification, it's probably the best anime of the year, if not the last couple of years.
Oh, Made in Abyss? You really thought it was that good?
Yeah, it's really, really good. The one downside is it's caught up to the manga because the manga's only had about 5 Takamon out when the show started being produced, and now there's a 6th. So it may be a while, but at least it didn't like rush towards the end. It's like, all right, we're gonna get to a certain point and stop. But it's it's got some of the most difficult to watch episodes I've seen in a while. Not because they're like horrifying or terrible, but they're just difficult. They're difficult to get through.
In what sort of way? In like an emotional way, or is in they're just bad, or
emotional way?
Oh, okay, sure.
Like, and one of them is like fear and anxiety, and the other one is just a good old gut punch.
You'll get that.
And it's a kid's show. So it's
you'll get that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And also the guy who does the backgrounds for it used to work at Ghibli doing their backgrounds. So,
Yes. I've heard about that.
If nothing else should convince you, that should convince you.
Yeah, and maybe I will when I have time for something.
It's only 13 episodes, Joe, but it's
that's not too bad.
Super fantastic. And
good.
I wish there was more already, but I have to wait.
Life's hard.
Yep. The only other like super news is that Shinichiro Watanabe made a Blade Runner anime.
Oh, yes. I heard about that.
Yeah, for those who aren't in the know, he's the director of Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, and Space Dandy. So, yeah.
Two of those things are really good. Space Dandy was a massive disappointment to everyone.
Well, I knew many people who found it very enjoyable.
Oh, well, there you go.
You not among them, I guess. But yeah, this guy made or I guess he was approached by the director of Blade Runner 2049 to do...
Oh, yeah?
That director went out and said, okay, I want 3 short stories to be done to bridge the gap between the original Blade Runner, which apparently takes place in like 2019, and the new one. So he basically was offloading his backstory telling to other people.
I mean, a solid plan. I've never actually seen Blade Runner. It's on my list of things that I actually really should do. No, I know. I've never seen it. Wow. Life's hard.
Well, I'll just tell you, don't watch the original theatrical release.
Yeah, watch the director's cut. That's what everyone says.
Watch any of the other ones. Just don't watch that one.
Yeah, that's what most people say.
Yep.
Was watch the director's cut.
Well, I guess that means you haven't watched the short. But it's a like 12-minute short that basically sets up the entire world from... There's a huge break between 2019 and 2049 in the environment. I can't...
Is this the one where the androids do in fact dream of electric sheep?
Perhaps. Since you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, and I'm not going to spoil it for anybody else, but...
I mean, I mostly know... It's hard to get away with not knowing too much about Blade Runner.
It has more to do with the new movie coming out. And it's like an important event that happened in the past that this depicts.
Oh, sure.
Past for the new movie, future for the old one.
Yeah. No, timey-wimey. Wibbly wobbly.
I mean, for 12 minutes, the plot's kind of thin, but the animation is fantastic and it's great.
I mean, sometimes that's all you really want, right? Sometimes you just want an animation showcase, especially when it's like a movie tie-in, because then like it can't be bad if it's just an animation showpiece. It's like, oh, it's thin but pretty.
Yeah, and the fight sequences are fantastic. It's very like Animatrix-y style.
Yeah.
Very much like that. There are 2 other shorts that go along with it. One that takes place like 5 or 10 years after that one, and then one that takes 5-10 years after that one.
Sure.
Those 2 are 5 minutes long, and they are both live action.
Yeah.
You say, but the first of those, like the second one's pretty generic, action-y, not too thrilled with it. But the first one has Jared Leto in it, who I don't really like, but he does a performance that is phenomenal. So I will give credit where credit's due. Terrible Joker, really good this guy. I don't really know who that guy is, but whoever he was supposed to be creepy, and he very much was.
Well, that's good.
It was a nice creepy. So yeah, that's what we've been doing. Although I do have a breaking announcement for anyone who cares.
I don't. I saw this.
I actually don't either.
The number one thing I care about this is the fact that it does have to do with that penguin who made that friend of the cardboard standee, and they didn't take it away, which is the best story to come out of Kemono Friends ever.
So I didn't even know what Kemono Friends was, but my Twitter feed
How could you not know what that is?
My Twitter feed blew up that Tatsuki, the director of Kemono Friends, the anime, was suddenly released from working on it. And it was like the biggest story because it got like 100,000 retweets within 30 minutes. And
that's kind of
Japan
weird,
as a country apparently is in mourning.
Yeah, no, I know.
And
like everyone loved that show.
I don't even know what it is.
Well, it's about like zoo animals. And I guess from what I understand, not only is it super moe, but it's one of those like calming shows. It's like a salaryman after work kind of calming show. But it's also good for kids. So it's basically just good for everyone to watch together. And also, it made a penguin fall in love with an anime, and Japan is quite endeared
yes, I remember
the
that.
penguin who fell in love with the anime.
Okay, so the only thing I know about this anime is from just glancing at it real quick. I'm like, well, this is either a kid's show or it's one of those shows. And I was assured.
Well, I don't think it's one of those shows.
I was assured initially it is in fact a kid's show, but it's kind of like recent seasons of My Little Pony, where it's like, it is for kids, but the makers of it do know that adults watch it for other reasons. And
other reasons.
And it kind of makes its way into the show in weird ways. And they pander to certain types of audience members.
I see where you're going. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Win some, lose some. It did make a penguin fall in love with an anime. So
yes, and that will never be taken away from us.
Evidently, because they tried to, and then they didn't.
But apparently, I heard that this show was ending anyway, so...
well, I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I've been so out of the loop on everything.
Well, I just looked it up here, and apparently it ended in March after only 12 episodes, so maybe he was just released from another season.
I mean, that would be my guess. We could talk about the little animation I sent you, because it's awesome.
Oh, did you send me a little animation?
Well, you know the one.
Oh,
to be fair, we should just really link that in the show notes, just because.
Yeah, I'll link this in the show notes. I'll let other people make up their own minds about this. Some people say it's amazing. Some people say it isn't. Who am I to say?
There's only one actual response, and everyone says it's amazing.
Hold
on. Let me do this. Quick vote. Amazing. Not amazing.
Are you making a Twitter poll?
Well, first off, I don't do Twitter anymore.
Oh, that's right.
But I will ask my roleplay forum, because I'm that guy.
Well, if you get a response by the end of the show, we will...
I'm sure I will.
We will let everybody know.
Of all, 9 of us who pretend to be vampires on the weekend.
I mean, everybody has to have a hobby.
I mean, they do. I'm a little old granny who eats children, so,
Oh, yeah, your reporter guy died in a horrible fashion.
Yeah, he did. He didn't have Netflix. Well, good news. My little old lady character did die, but now she's a vampire, so. Not amazing. Put on some pants. Okay, well, that's a bad vote. I'm just going to do emoji, thumbs down. Oh, yeah, that's actually a pretty funny line there. All right. Okay, so let's drown in emotions.
You want to drown in emotions? We can do that.
In an anime that's not particularly super well animated, but extremely well shot, if that makes sense.
It does, when you put it that way.
It's got really great shots. Its animation is a little dodgy, but not just because it's student. It feels more student than it is bad. But the shots are really, really good.
Yeah. So let's get into Mizu no Kotoba. I guess I should I even bother with the whole we're doing OVAs now?
I mean, look,
hey guys.
I think that's dumb. We're doing OVAs now?
Yeah, we're doing OVAs now, guys. If you didn't know that, you're 13 episodes behind or something.
Okay, we have another vote in, and it is thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
They do, in fact, want us to put another dime in the jukebox. So
this 9-minute show.
Yeah, super short.
Yeah, so Mizu no Kotoba.
It's really clever. I like how it is constructed, which will be lost when we view it on mute. So this won a couple of awards, right?
It did. It won
when we gave it a good old goog.
Yeah, it won the Excellent Work Award at the Tokyo International Anime Fair way back in 2003. And the most interesting thing to me is it was directed by Yasuhiro Yoshiura. He directed this, and then he went on to direct Pale Cocoon, Eve no G-Con. a bunch of other AI stuff.
Yeah, because we were going to say that maybe when we were thinking about this season, I was like, oh, maybe we should just watch all the shows he did.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that like a bunch of the shows that are on our thing are like by this guy.
Yeah.
So is this his first major work then?
I think it's his second.
All right. The first being...
I think he did another one. No, it's
one before this.
The first one he directed was one called Noisy Birth, which I've never heard of.
Well, when I say first, I just mean sort of breakout, like his first like big success that like won stuff. And
it was the first thing that got him an award.
Okay, so for all intents and purposes,
but not the first thing he directed.
Yeah. So it's his first major work then.
Right. Okay. He also did some of the design work in Evangelion 2.0 and some other stuff.
He's good.
He's good, and most of his stuff seems to be focused on like robotics, futurism, and just general communication between people.
Oh, I mean, spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. I may have just given the whole plot away.
I mean, you just said everything that happens in the short, so communication. But yeah,
that is true.
This is a fascinating little thing. Oh, and it's got lots of CGI in it, which is actually quite good now knowing that it was from 2002.
I like how CGI from shows before like 2007 actually worked its way into the frame without being super jarring, whereas now it looks like paper mache cutouts that are just sort of thrown on the screen.
Yeah, it can.
Funny that. So Mizu no Kotoba starts in a very, very small cafe. Like, I'm pretty sure it's 8 feet wide.
Yeah, I know. And we get this great little pan down. There's lots of just these really good traveling shots in this, which is one of the things that like sort of make up for its like, and I wouldn't say shoddy animation, but economical animation. Let's just put it that way.
On a budget.
Yeah. It's definitely economically done, but they get around that by just having these like really good moving and panning shots that really sort of add movement to an otherwise still nonsense.
So to give you an idea of the set piece, because this whole thing takes place in this one stage area, it's basically like it seems like a coffee shop in an old abandoned warehouse where like this 12-foot section was sort of walled off from the rest of it.
It's like a hipster tasting room in Seattle
It's very much like that.
Yeah.
It's very like deep. Don't know where the entrance is because the camera doesn't show
where the camera is. Yeah, it's fourth wall. The entrance is mostly fourth wall.
And way at the back, there's a bar with a barista behind it. And there are a few tables and brochures in a little like travel stand.
Yeah, we're dealing with basically it's kind of empty-ish here in the bar. There's as we pan back to the bar itself, we pass two guys talking at one table, two girls talking at another, and then for all intents and purposes, our main character sitting alone at the bar, talking to the barista. And the character designs in this aren't great, but they do what they want. I think he took a lot of notes from the sort of bone theory of animation, right? Where you try and make characters very, very simple to make them more stand-in-y, to make them more generic's not the right word. Make them better stand-ins for whoever. For
the audience.
Right. Yeah.
Well, as we get to the protagonist, he's sitting there at the bar and he's looking sort of very annoyed, tapping his fingers.
Content to be slightly forlorn?
Yes, forlorn. And we get this very short flashback of him and sitting down in silhouette against the window, and a woman is yelling at him. We instantly flip back, but you already know everything you need to know.
Yeah, basically. He has had a fight with a lady. It's like, oh, I see where this is going. And it does these like really cool POV shots where it like does this character's point of view with sort of the eyeball shaped filter lens, even adding blinks to it, which is really interesting. So to do these cool POV shots.
But it lets you see that he is making eye contact with the barista and then sort of looking around behind the counter. But yeah, she notices that he's looking at her and is like, you look really bummed out. He's like, yeah, I am, because women.
Yeah. Well, no, it's slightly funnier than that, because the barista's like, man, you look super bummed, like you just broke up with your girlfriend. He's like, I did just break up with my girlfriend. See, that's some good line. Though technically in the Japanese, she says, due to the clausal nature of the language, she says sort of like you just broke up with your girlfriend, you look bummed. So the broke up with your girlfriend part is actually the first part of the sentence rather than the last part of the sentence.
Yeah.
So it does some kind of funny mirroring.
I think it's interesting that she says that she's never herself had her heart broken.
Yeah.
In response to this, because she doesn't really.
Yeah. Because he's like, you just wouldn't understand in a very melodramatic way. And you're like, oh, yeah, no, you're right. I've never had my heart broken, so I wouldn't understand. It's like, oh, well then.
So would you like to tell everybody what he did to instigate this stupid fight with his girlfriend?
Oh, I don't remember. I'm going to have to watch slightly ahead. What was the cause?
He said, and I quote, "You're so annoying, you should pay more attention to me."
I mean, yeah, that will instigate a fight with most women and most people, for that matter.
Uh-huh.
If you tell somebody you're annoying and you should pay more attention to me, that generally makes people unhappy with you. At least in my expert opinion.
Yeah, well, the barista's like, well, you kind of had that going for you. So he's like, but I didn't actually mean it. So, but before we get any more into that conversation, we suddenly switch to another conversation. Or do we? No, we don't. Yes, we do. It's sort of this bleed between, because we're in the point
it's really cool
of switching between perspectives.
Yeah, they have a turn sentence, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it's basically there are more fish in the sea, but it's said by both the barista and by this pink-haired girl sitting at a table. And when they say it, the camera pans all the way back to the far corner of the room, so we get an overhead shot of everyone in the room, and then we zoom into this other table.
Is it another fish in the sea? Is that the sentence? I think there's another one. Hold on. I think that may be later. Let's see.
Well, it's here. Like it's a big world. You'll find another person sooner or later.
Look, half the world is girls.
Yeah.
But speaking of that, listen to this story, and that's when it zooms over to this other group of girls saying the same thing.
And they are having a gossip sesh.
Yes, and I like the pink-haired girl's friend, who is pedantic in my favorite way.
Really?
But the pink-haired girl's like, listen to this story. I heard it from a friend's friend. And she's like, hey, wait a minute. Wait. Your friend's friend is someone you've never met, because it's a friend of your friend and not your friend. And there's a little diagram that pops up about how this relationship works. And it's like, this is a girl I could...
And it's got tons and tons of kanji in it. And she's like...
Oh, yeah, it's just going great.
Could you please not twist my words so much or read so much into my words? And she's like, but it bothers me.
It's like, but, like, look, we're going to be clear and concise about what we're talking about here. A friend of a friend that you heard something from, you didn't really hear it from them because you've never met them. You would just say this person.
She's like, yeah, look, someone told my friend, and my friend told me. There's a trust relationship here. And she's like, well, it's still hearsay, so... She's like, shut up. Now, listen.
Now, hey, listen.
And she's like, okay, so there was this guy that she liked, and she thought that he was, like, the most compatible guy for her.
And there's an interesting thing here they do with... They split screen it, and you get to see, like, both girls, like, hand... what they're doing with their hands and their faces. Their mannerisms as they're speaking. Mm-hmm. So you get the full... Because, you're supposed to get just as much information about what somebody's saying by their body language as with their body language is what I'm looking for here.
Right.
You get to really see their body language. It's really nice.
And then they sort of end their conversation on almost a cliffhanger, because she's like, but then it turns out that and it sort of cuts off, and we go back to the barista real quick, who is berating the patron to get his act together. And then we get back to the pink-haired chick, and she's like, it turns out he wasn't even a guy. It's like, whoa, that was slightly unexpected.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the camera, it looks like we're going to go to another transition, go back to the barista. So the camera starts panning towards the barista. But as soon as the pink-haired girl goes, it turns out he wasn't a guy, the camera stops and moves back a bit, like you were walking past the table and go, what?
Well, that's kind of how this whole thing's shot, right? Where it's shot like you pass conversations and you hear something interesting, so you focus in on it.
Yeah.
And then if something else catches your ear, you go focus in on that. So it's really interesting. It's shot like how you would listen to a room full of people having small conversations.
Yes.
Which is a really interesting thing to do. It also does it with rack focusing. It does different it might not move the camera, but it might focus in literally on different conversations by changing the focus of the camera. It's using the camera as an ear, which is a very interesting, it's a really interesting thing to do in film that you don't see very often. So there's my film studies.
Your film studies thing. So the two girls at the table suddenly realize that it's gotten kind of heavy now because they've sort of realized that, you know, the friend of the friend now can't ever be together with the person that they thought they wanted to be with. And they're like, well, I mean, it could happen, right?
Well, and I also want to get back to the phrase that turns out this guy wasn't even a guy at the end.
Yeah, we'll come back to that and a couple other things that were said.
Yeah.
But the pink-haired girl once again goes, you really like getting hung up on my words, don't you? And once again, she's like, but it bothers me. And then we shift the whole conversation over to another conversation.
About words. Because, our turning point here is just like words in general. Because we move over to these guys that are kind of like, they're kind of punky. They've got like the beanies and the sort of half-lidded eyes and earrings and stuff. And there's a big guy and a scrawny guy, and this guy, these guys, like, words themselves have strange powers. Talking about kind of like, kind of like word magic. Like very ancient forms of like word magic. Yeah. Slash sort of old philosophical ideas of like logos and stuff, right?
Yes. And he's talking about how like the words have power behind them because they're like concepts, and any words that don't really have concepts attached to them vanish pretty much right away. Yeah. So kind of like some cool like philosophical stuff, but he doesn't really like view it in a philosophical way. He's just sort of viewing it as a like 3 a.m. shower thoughts kind of whoa sort of way. But he's trying to convince the bigger guy of all of this stuff, but the bigger guy is focused on something up on the wall, not paying attention at all. He's like, "What? Are you even listening?" And the dude's like, "Well, look up there." And so they both turn around and look. And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Picture that fish." Well, this picture reminds me, it's like a famous fish print. Did you just Google famous fish print? Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's this style of fish printing art form from, hey, guess what? Japan. Yep. Gyotaku. Gyotaku? Yep, Gyotaku. Yep. Yeah. It's a Gyotaku painting. So basically it's a fish print where they basically took a fish, put ink on it, and smacked it on a piece of paper. Oh, Japan. But it's a pretty old form. So, I mean, it's about 200-300 years old. That's cheating. Yeah. Cheating way. But, well, I mean, they did woodblock prints, so you'd be like, well, what else can we print? It's like, well, fish are pretty detailed, and we care a whole heck of a lot about fish in our culture, so that... I like how I went on the Wikipedia page and the first sentence is like, well, it's actually used by fishermen to record their catches and then eventually became an art. Yeah, I mean, that sounds a lot like Japan. Yep. I mean, ukiyo-e was just like throwaway Lisa Frank art. Uh-huh. So they're looking at this big fish and he's like, no, you got to really look at that fish. It's just look at that fish. And the other guy's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. The big guy's like, no, the fish, it's alive. Yeah. He's like, no, look. Okay. 3 days ago, dude. No, listen. 3 days ago, I was sitting right here, same spot, looking up at that picture, and it wasn't there. Like that picture frame and everything was there, but the fish wasn't. And the guy's like, okay, well, you're probably just misremembering, so... Yeah, because there's like a bazillion paintings in here, because this place is hyper hipster, so... Yeah, there's like 500 paintings, blackboards everywhere. But then the bigger guy's like, yeah, but what's crazy is what happened next. And he's like, that fish swam into the painting. So... Well, it wasn't just in the painting. Like, you get this view of his flashback from his perspective, and the fish is floating through the air... Yeah. I think I miscommunicated there. What I wanted to say is that he swam into the painting, he wasn't swimming in the painting. He was swimming from the ether back into his frame. But this poor guy can't articulate that to his friend, and it's like, that fish, it was swimming. And then we scan over to this
rack of pamphlets, and I think it's a small lending library because this place is that kind of hipster, and it doesn't bother to translate any of this stuff until we get down to like SF, which simply because it means sci-fi, and that's kind of irritating because I'm sure there's some like real stuff here somewhere.
Well, the mystery section's right above it.
Mystery. Kimi no Mystery.
Yeah. But again...
Do you not remember Kimi no Mystery?
I unfortunately remember Kimi no Mystery.
How can you... Oh, so that show was memorable then?
No, that song was memorable.
Okay, fair enough.
Nice try.
I'll allow it.
But this conversation leads into a new thing. So the conversation's the big guy is like, I know you don't believe me. And the skinnier guy is like, yeah, you're right, because that's impossible. And we scan over these books while they're talking, and we get to science fiction, which is all about things that are impossible. And
it's empty. Though that whole area of the rack is like completely empty. And then we scan over to this young boy who has all of the books on the table in front of him, and he is reading.
Yep. Reading every single one of them.
And then we zoom into the book page.
And apparently he's reading iRobot.
I'm not sure he is, because it has a quote on it. So he's like reading like a book of like science fiction quotes,
I guess,
because it does go into the 3 laws of robotics, right? First law: robot cannot injure a human being nor through inaction allow a human being to become a harm. From iRobot, Isaac Asimov. So I think it's just like a list of like
I mean, you could
like a reference.
On the other hand, I think that's how the book actually starts, is with those 3 laws.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it does start with those 3 laws, but
from
it wouldn't,
iRobot.
It wouldn't say, this is from the book you are reading by me, the author, right now. That would take a real pretentious author to do such a thing.
This is true. So right after we see this quote in the science fiction book, we both pan up to the fish, and we hear the girl talking from before.
The pink-haired girl talking conversation.
Going back to that story she heard from the friend of a friend, the hearsay.
So the hearsay, yeah.
And she's like, yeah, it doesn't matter who you find, you're always going to find some flaw.
Yeah, you're going to find somebody who's like super compatible, but you're going to have some flaws. So that wouldn't bother me, but,
And she's like, no. I'm talking about a fatal flaw. And so she asks for an example, and then they both at the same time. And they both say at the same time, for example,
like he
wasn't a guy.
He wasn't really a guy.
Yeah, that's a deal breaker right there.
Yeah, man. At least for these ladies. Deal broken. Now, this is probably #problematic, but this was 2002. Also Japan. So
we get another cool transition, because at the same time that they're like, is that story really true? And the pink hair girl's like, it is true, and hits the table a couple times. Like, yes, it is. But while that happens, the camera backs up at every hit to the to the patron. And he's like, man, girls are annoying.
Yeah, and the question is he talking about his girlfriend, or is he overhearing the girls in there in the background?
That's a good question. Probably both.
Yeah, probably.
So the barista's like, maybe you're being a little conceited.
And then she zips away and zips over to him. And because the guy's like, man, you're young too, so quit it.
And she's like,
talking about how the youth are conceited these days.
I'm actually pretty old.
A little older than I look. And he's like, well, that's an odd thing for a woman to say. Girls don't often say that kind of thing about themselves.
And she's like, what kind of thing?
What do you mean? What kind of things? And he's like, well, like that you've never had your heart broken. Like, that's weird.
Yeah, saying those kinds of things is weird.
And she's like, yeah, but it's true. So, I mean, what am I going to do? Like, not say that?
Yeah, they're interrupted by the pink hair girl coming up and asking for a refill. But it's interesting here, because we assume that this is taking place in Japan, and the girl doesn't ask for a refill. She just says refill. Did you notice that?
I mean, that's true.
Yeah, she just sort of demands a refill from the barista, which is a little rude, honestly.
It kind of is. Yeah, she's pretty rude about it.
Like,
she interrupts her conversation.
Refill.
And then we get a sweet action shot of the coffee machines.
But there's otherwise no interaction between the barista and the pink hair girl.
I do like this because it's a rapid cut, and I'm a pretty good sucker for a rapid cut of mundane tasks.
The pink hair girl and the patron now at the bar are just sort of standing there waiting for the coffee to finish.
Both being super awkward, trying hard not to look at each other.
When suddenly they're both shaken from their whatever it is they're doing, their mundane sitting. And the big guy's like, no, look, guys, the fish. You gotta look at that fish. Seriously.
You gotta deal with this fish problem.
He's like, you might see what I'm saying if you actually looked at it up close. Just look at the fish.
And this does draw the eye, literally, of the patron as he looks up at the fish in another POV shot, as he does, in fact, look at the fish. Yeah. And then he sees, just beyond the fish, a little door with a little fish on it. Up in, like, some rafters. Scaffolding. No?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
The big girders. Up.
Yeah, you know, like a catwalk.
Like a catwalk. Well, at this point, the pink-haired girl, we cut back to the bar real quick, and the pink-haired girl has been given her coffee, but for some reason hasn't, like, noticed yet. And the barista's like, what, am I strange looking or something?
Yeah.
And the pink-haired girl takes the coffee and runs back to the table and is like, that person over there, she says to her friend. And then she's like, you're kidding. So apparently they've said something that pertains to something. Not sure what, actually, at that point.
Yeah.
But the patron actually overhears this and is like, I think this may be the first time he's noticed that they're there. Because he's like, see, girls are annoying. Barista gets in way too close and is like, I think they're talking about me, not you.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? Are you just trying to spare my feelings or something? Why are you in my space? And what's weird is as soon as she's like right up in his face, he's just sort of has this moment of realization where she was talking about how he'll find a good person eventually.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, maybe I could get with the barista. Or I could get back with my girlfriend. Because he thinks back to his girlfriend because he's like, well, even if someone has a couple of flaws, maybe I could still get with them.
Yeah, because he's kind of like at least somewhat internalized the monologue of the other girls somehow. Like if you're compatible, there are going to be some flaws, and you just kind of have to deal with it.
And then we get this little cut of like actual text on the screen that says, "Of the people I have met, I think you're the one I'm most compatible with."
Mm-hmm. Is that read in a voice? I don't remember.
It is. It's read in his voice.
Okay. Well, the question is he saying it to his girlfriend in his mind because he was just thinking about her, or
that's a good question.
Lady?
It's not quite sure because she leans on the bar and is like, "Man, you are in bad shape."
Yep.
So if he did say it, she's kind of trying to let him down, and if he's internalizing it, he just looks bad.
And then we go back to the nerd boy in his books, and there's a picture of fish in the books and another quote. It's like we're looking at the glass of a gigantic aquarium, staring at the crystal glass. From 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne.
I like this cut because we smash cut back to the patron who's looking at the barista, and for a short second, there's like some science graph in front of her face, which blurs away real quick.
Did you happen to catch what it is?
I did not.
Neither did I.
Let me try and pause it. Some graphs. It's a graph of something. I can't really tell what.
Yeah. Okay. Then we'll not worry about it.
No,
I'm sure it's fine. It's fine.
But she points real quick and is like, "Hey, see that easel back there?" He's like, past the crazy fish guy? Yeah, that one. He's like, go take a look at the easel real quick. He's like,
for me.
Are you sure?
Please.
Okay.
Let me get a nice good back-upping panning shot as we listen to other conversations from the other people as he moves his way up. He passes the two girls, and they're talking about how a human-shaped robot isn't called a robot, which it's not. That's actually the definition of android.
Yep.
It's a human-shaped robot. So there you go.
Then he passes the crazy fish guys. So does that make him a freaky fish guy?
Who? This guy?
The big dude. Is he a freaky fish guy?
Yeah, I guess. Why?
You don't know freaky fish guy?
Are you talking about Fish from Anime Hell?
No, I'm talking about this.
I'm not a freaky fish guy. Okay. Oh, sweet. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is it a Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged? So it is.
No, just watch the first 10 seconds. That's all you need to see.
Yes, I'm not a freaky fish guy.
I am not a freaky fish guy.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah. Not a freaky fish guy.
Anyway.
But as he passes the freaky fish guy is, even if the scrawny guy is actually like, even if your story is true, it's still impossible. So
yeah, the big guy seems to have sort of given up on convincing anybody of anything and is pretty dejected. But the camera looks up at the painting, and the fish is gone.
the scrawny guy himself sort of leans his head back and cranes it up, just kind of out of idleness, but he happens to crane up at the painting, and the fish is gone. And he's like, well, even if it's true,
I'm not going to believe it. So the patron gets to the sign, and the sign basically says Mizu no Kotoba, which is the name of the bar, apparently.
Yeah, but down at the bottom, there's a little thing. There's a little bit of extra text.
It says, please follow the route indicated, with a little, very thin arrow pointing off to the right and behind.
Another door with the little fish symbol on it.
Fish on the inside of the door.
Girders. Yeah, and there's some wires going into this door, so he goes through it.
And as he goes in, he hears the other patrons in the bar suddenly start screaming, the fish is gone again! And then the door closes behind him.
Yeah. And he is on the catwalk up on the ceiling, but also underwater.
Yes. So at this point, the acid kicks in.
Yeah, more or less. And he's up on the catwalk above all of the patrons, and he can sort of look out and see all the people talking in a semi-frozen sort of way.
Yeah, so to give this some perspective, he went in a door that was
on the main level.
On the main level that was kind of near where the two girls were talking, which was right next to the bar. And suddenly he's at the far end at the upper level.
Mm-hmm.
Just walking through that door. So it's like the Stargate or something. Or it's Portal.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
And what should appear but a giant fish.
But that giant printed fish along with tons of bubbles. And the fish sort of swims around, and then all these bubbles start coming up. And in these bubbles are the snippets of conversation that everybody else is having.
Yep, that are all floating up towards whatever surface exists.
Up into the ephemera.
And the camera focuses on one of these particular bubbles, and it's the one guy saying that powerful words remain even after they're spoken.
And then goes up and leaves the top of the bar, we guess. And the screen goes white, and then we cut back to the sign of Aquatic Language as the bar has mostly closed as our pro tag comes down.
Yep, all the chairs are up on the tables, everything's been cleaned, and it's just the patron and the barista. Else is left. And she's like, would you like to continue our conversation? And he's like, nah, it wasn't important. I think I'm good. Well, he's like, hey, why did you show me that weird thing just now?
And he points up, and she says, well, I may not allow a human being to come to harm, she says.
What?
Oh, and then we get some rapid cuts of basically the show so far, and we do get a better picture of that graph.
Yep. The graph is...
which we should be able to stop on.
Essentially, so there's one track going up, one track going down. There's two axes, potential and time. The two things cross, and it says the 3 laws of robotics. That's all it says. And
turning point, 1 and 2.
Right, the turning point. Which may indicate this moment right now, where we're learning this.
Yeah. What? Oh, it's the first and second laws of robotics, right? And there's a turning point because there's like there's going to be a point where they cross where it's like harm a person, but can't let a person come to harm.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a point where the priorities of those two would flip, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you might have to hurt somebody a little bit to protect them from more harm later.
And she's like, it's the 3 laws of robotics, as she moves sideways and sideways, strafing around the bar until she's lifted up by a hydraulic thingamajig because she's a robot barista.
She's a robot. Well, she's not a robot. She's an android.
Sorry, android. A very sophisticated one on the end of an actuated arm.
Yep. Yeah, she's just like, it's my duty to help people. And she's like, I helped you, right? Through this conversation. And his eyes just kind of go wide, but not like super shocked. Just like a little wide.
He's like, oh.
And she's like, do you need me to say anything else? And he's like, no, I think you've said plenty. Bye. She just says, thanks for coming.
And that's it.
And it pans up to a bubble and to the name of the show.
Yep.
So back to the beginning, when they were saying that he wasn't really a guy, it's heavily implied that what they really mean is he was a robot.
He was a robot. But the friend of a friend couldn't tell that.
Especially since they're talking about how sort of scandalized they are about this barista as well.
Mm-hmm. It's weird that the pink hair girl noticed that the barista was a robot, but the dude didn't.
Well, maybe it's because she was standing, so it was a higher angle, so she could see the fact that she ain't got no legs, much like Lieutenant Dan.
He's got new legs.
He got no legs, and then he got new legs. This has no legs.
So now the things that she said before make more sense. Like, well, I've never had my heart broken. You're right. I won't understand that. And I'm older than I look.
Because you a robot.
Yeah, because you're always gonna look that old forever.
Because you're a robot.
Robot barista.
Robot.
So what did you think about the short as a whole?
I really liked it. It's a little weird, but I like it.
Yeah, like you said, the animation quality isn't that great, but it is essentially a student-ish film.
But it makes up for it by doing like really clever things with its camera, right?
Oh yeah,
where it's
really
got this 3D.
Stuff.
It's got this 3D space that it's CGI'd mostly, so it just moves around in this 3D space really well.
Yeah,
the camera does. That really helps it.
And I really like the way it moves in a way, like you said, that it sort of follows a like ghostly observer of all these conversations, especially when you're walking
like
by
the fish, right?
With the fish and with the conversation where they're going. It turns out that he wasn't a guy, and it's like, what now?
Now hold on. That's an interesting place. But I also like how it like says a whole lot of things without like saying anything, right? Like it says it's obviously this little short is saying a lot of things all at once. But it's saying but it's not very explicit about any of them.
Right.
It's just sort of giving you this sort of context of ideas and stuff about conversations and thought, and even a little bit of futurism all thrown in there.
Yeah, it does a fair amount of world building in 9 minutes. Without doing any world building at all. It's not like, hey guys, look how clever we are. Except with that twist at the end, I guess. But that's you sort of need that in this short form. But you got your world building. You've got a lot of commentary on language and communication. And the funny thing is, a lot of that is delivered visually.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like that's what's very interesting, right?
Yes.
Especially using the camera as an ear. Like that's clever.
That is really clever.
Well, it's kind of like I brought this up before. Have you ever seen the music video for Frontier Psychiatrist?
Yes, I have.
And it's like super weird and strange until you sort of realize what it's doing, where it's like using visual elements to represent the samples that they're using in the song. And so it's very clever because it's like you can sample in a song and it's perfectly normal and not that weird or strange. But as soon as you move that sampling to a visual medium, it makes things really jarring and different.
Yeah.
It's just changing the medium of the method.
And then suddenly you feel like one is okay, but one is weird.
The other's just like super weird. And this is kind of doing the same thing where it's sort of like walking through a room listening to different conversations, like that's perfectly reasonable and everyday thing. But as soon as you sort of move the ear to an eye, it makes things a little stranger.
Yes.
When it's essentially the exact same thing, you're just sort of, instead of eavesdropping, you're eaves looking.
Yeah, floating from one conversation to another as your attention shifts between them.
Yeah, so it's just a very interesting thing to do. Very clever directorial idea. I can see why people would like give him a reward for like doing this very clever cinematography trick.
The protagonist, the patron, was actually the director. So he actually played that role.
Oh, well, that's cool.
Which is funny. So yeah, he went on to do other things like Pale Cocoon and Eve no Jikon, which I think are on our lists. They are on our list, and they're both really. I don't know
if we want to do those next, but I'm still in the process of moving, so maybe we should get on that sweet Yamishibai.
Yeah.
Train.
I'm thinking for the month of October, maybe we should go through some Yamishibais or any other creepy OVAs we can find, and also during our little catch-up session each week, talk about one creepy anime that we really like.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we could do that. Because I think, I don't think we're going to plan on what we're going to watch next week. I think we're each just going to watch a random episode of Yamishibai. Because there's a bunch now, because a new season just started.
Yep.
So there's probably something like 50 of these darn things.
Yeah, they're only like 3 minutes each.
Yeah, and they're super short. So I think we should both watch, like 2 or 3?
Yeah,
kind of semi-random.
So that is what we'll be doing next week. So see you guys then.
So yeah, goodbye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to get in touch with us to leave comments or suggest future silly topics, you can contact us on Facebook or Twitter at Aniki Podcast. Or if you'd like to know more about the show and hear past episodes, check out our website at aniki.fm. See you next time on Aniki.